Says the biggest ship ever built for the Navy is still on track to enter service with the fleet on time. Richard Jones has more.
The consortium building HMS Queen Elizabeth have been very careful never to officially name a specific date, either for her to go to sea for the first time or to make her maiden arrival in her home port. But I'm told that across government, the MOD and the Royal Navy, May the 29th had been penciled in as a possible day for Queen Elizabeth to tie up here in Portsmouth for the first time. That date has now been scratched from their diaries. It won't happen. Navy watcher Mike Critchley says that with such a complex ship, a few extra weeks is not surprising.
We've got a ship, a complex weapon system, we've got an airfield on the roof, so it's a very, very complex system, and you expect delays with complex systems.
This is an aircraft carrier we're going to have for the next 25, 30 years. A few months is not going to make much difference, but it's a hugely complex warship, and the crew are just settling in now. They're going to have to spend some time getting used to it. So I suspect there may be some slippage, but it's not going to make much difference to the long-term role of the aircraft carrier.
The official line came from the government in the House of Commons after questioning by a former Defence Minister.
What is the reasons for this, and what is going to be the operational service date for Queen Elizabeth? Minister.
Well, I would like to just confirm to the honourable gentleman that she will commence her sea trials this summer, and she will enter into the same programme so that she can sail into Portsmouth later this year.
No one said why the timescale has slipped. Much of it is likely to do with the technical side of building such a vast ship. But the Defence Secretary Michael Fallon, who visited Portsmouth last year to see preparations for her arrival, says she's still on track to enter service with the fleet by the end of the year. Richard Jones, ITV News.
The RMT union says it's considering more strikes on Southern Rail. Now, that's despite the drivers' union, ASLEF, reaching an agreement with rail bosses over driver-only operated trains yesterday. So, with a deal seemingly done between ASLEF and Southern, where does that leave the RMT and long-suffering commuters? Sangeeta.
Thanks, Fred. Well, today the RMT, which represents 360 guards on Southern, says it's considering more strikes and whether to accept the offer of talks with rail bosses next week. In the last RMT walkout on January the 23rd, 70% of trains were able to run. As for ASLEF, 1,000 members have begun voting today in a ballot ending on February the 16th, asking them to ratify the deal. The details are for now secret, but it's understood that ASLEF has agreed that drivers will operate the train doors. In return, the company has agreed there will always be a second member of staff on every train, a new onboard supervisor rather than a guard. There are also thought to be guarantees about good quality cameras to monitor train doors and staff on stations where it is difficult for drivers to see. Meanwhile, the dispute with the guards is ongoing. The RMT wasn't invited in the TUC brokered talks between ASLEF and Southern, and the RMT says its dispute is still on.
Joining us, Paul Cox from the RMT. Paul, thank you very much. ASLEF have agreed to deal with the rail operator, subject to a balance, of course, by union members. So that's it, presumably. It's game over for you, the end of the dispute, is it?
Well, Fred, unfortunately, we don't have very much knowledge of what the content of the arrangement that ASLEF have made with the company contains. So I'm going to reserve my position on that until I've had an opportunity to scrutinise what's on offer. RMT members have taken 25 days of strike action, and I think my members would only expect that we would pay due diligence here rather than making rash statements about whether something's acceptable or not.
Do you feel you have been slightly betrayed by another union?
Well, Fred, I'm not going to comment on that again until I consider that unlikely. However, I remain to see the contents of the arrangements. What is quite strange is that hasn't been made available to me.
Now, you've had assurances about a second person on trains. Southern have said they are, and I quote, ready, willing and able to meet with you, the RMT, next week. Presumably you will.
I think that's likely, Fred, if for no other reason than we want to understand what the proposal is. But I truly hope that there is something that we can put to our members.
But surely, Paul, now is the time to try and call off this torture for commuters, some of whom have lost their jobs. Otherwise, will you not be accused of bloody-mindedness?
Well, I don't mind being accused of bloody-mindedness when it comes to safety, Fred. I'll be quite honest with you about that. And I think the public in the South East are a bit more sophisticated than people give them credit for. They do understand that it's a safety issue. They do want to keep a guard on the train. That manifests itself in support daily that my members get from their customers on the trains. And every time a survey is done by the radio stations and the TV stations, 70% of the travelling public blame the government and the train company, not the RMT.
Well, let's hope to a fairly swift end to all of this. Paul Cox, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Fred.
A man's been arrested after a pedestrian was killed on the A325 near Farnham in Surrey. A 43-year-old woman died when a car and a motorbike collided at Alice Holt Forest on Wednesday. 54-year-old man from Liss arrested on suspicion of causing death by careless driving, failing to stop and failing to report an accident, has been bailed until May.
A woman in her 80s has been tied to a chair by burglars who then stole money and jewellery from her home in Christchurch. A man and a woman used cable ties to restrain the pensioner at her home on Oak Avenue. The woman later managed to free herself and call police.
£25 million has been allocated by the government to build a long-awaited Stubbington bypass. Work on the road near Fareham is expected to start within 2 years and would take around 2 years to complete. The bypass will run through 3 miles of farmland near Stubbington village, connecting the A27 with the former Daedalus airfield and a new Solent enterprise zone. Now, a week ago, we showed you the new multi-million-pound cancer immunology centre currently being built next to Southampton General Hospital, the first of its kind in the country. Well, the hospital has received a further boost with the charity Cancer Research, investing more than £8 million into its existing research facilities there.
Tomorrow is World Cancer Day, when celebrities, fundraisers and anyone touched by cancer will be sporting these. They're unity bands and a show of defiance and support. Martin Dowse reports now on how Southampton has found itself at the forefront of the fight against the disease.
When you've run that half marathon or held that cake sale and you wanted to see where some of the money's gone, well, it's to places like this. Cancer Research UK's Southampton laboratories. If there are tens of thousands of individual battles going on out there in the war with cancer, then this is its Bletchley Park, where they hope to crack the chemical and genetic codes which will point the way to defeating it. The latest weapons being developed here are immunotherapy treatments, a way to program an individual's own immune system to target and destroy cancer cells.
It is changing. We're given new information from understanding the genetics of cancer, and particularly of interest to the Southampton community, which has been doing worldwide leading research on the immunotherapy of cancer, how we co-opt the immune system to battle against cancer and use medicines to harness that. And indeed, that's very much the focus of the award that we've been given by CRUK to develop that over the next 5 years.
Cancer Research UK's just invested £8.2 million in the ongoing work here. That gives hope to people like Amanda Barnes. She's Deputy Director of Nursing at Southampton General and was also diagnosed with advanced ovarian cancer 5 years ago.
I think as a patient and a nurse, I've got a lot of admiration for the researchers and the scientists, the professors and the consultants that are doing that work. It gives people that focus to think, oh wow, that's something on the South Coast. For people on the South Coast, I'm not going to have to travel up to London to get that second opinion, to get that trial. I can have it on the South Coast. And I see and talk to people at Southampton and that they've got such a passion and a drive to get that next step, to find out how we can combat the disease and how we can use science to the absolute best effect. And that's that somebody like me, who's kind of quite a long way down the line, having cancer and having lots of different treatments, you just think, yeah, that's great, it's exciting and it gives you hope.
Cancer diagnoses are increasing. 1 in 2 of us will have the disease at some point in our lives. But the good news is that thanks to the work being done in laboratories like this, half of those diagnosed will now survive. And they hope that with new treatments that will increase by 2034 to 3 out of every 4. Martin Dowse, ITV News.
For more on all of our stories, head to itv.com/Meridian. Call us or get in touch via Facebook or Twitter.
Next tonight, all we hear too often is about car crashes on roads across the South and Thames Valley. Accidents do happen, but the good news is we're now far more likely to walk away from a crash than we were 20 years ago.
Yes, and that's because 2 decades ago, cars started being independently crash tested. In more recent years, they've been put through their paces at the Thatcham Research Facility in Berkshire.
Work there has revolutionised cars as we know them, dramatically improving the safety of drivers and passengers. With more, Lauren Hall.
2 cars about to crash at 40 miles per hour. The top one is a modern vehicle. The one below dates back 20 years.
This is the aftermath of the crash. Now, at first glance, both cars are in quite a state. If you look at the front, they're completely smashed up. But take a look at where the driver and passengers are sitting. That's where the difference is, and it's the difference between life and death.
Fortunately, these are just crash test dummies. But what if they had been real people?
If I show you this car, you can see how well it's done. You can see it's absorbed the energy of the crash. This part is perfectly maintained. He's safe and secure. I can even open the door and the windscreen isn't even broken. So here's the Rover. Firstly, very poor energy absorption here. It's just twisted the structure. This space has been reduced by about 400 millimetres, which means his survival space has been severely restricted.
The footage shows just how serious it would have been for the driver and their passengers.
You can see just how bad, not just that one, but many cars were at the time now, and just how far we've gone in just 20 years. And that's the vehicle manufacturers and us working together.
20 years ago saw the introduction of the European New Car Assessment Programme, independently crash testing our cars for the first time. That year, 23,000 people travelling in cars were killed or seriously injured. The most recent annual figure shows it's fallen to 8,500. So you're now twice as likely to walk away from a crash than you were 2 decades ago. It's clear we've come a long way, but how much further could we go? There are now calls for autonomous emergency braking to be fitted in all new cars. It uses sensors to warn of approaching hazards, automatically applying the brakes if the driver doesn't do so in time. Jane Wilkinson sees it as an exciting development. She was seriously injured when she was cut up on a motorway 10 years ago.
My automatic reaction was there's something in my way, I need to swerve. And in doing so, lost control of the car. Had the car had something like automatic braking in place, then potentially the car would have slowed down to prevent further injuries.
A road safety charity supports the new technology, but warns drivers will still need to pay attention.
Even if they have this good technology which can brake and stop a car in an emergency situation, that doesn't mean that a driver can sit there and be distracted or be speeding at the time. They still to make sure that they play an important part in that safety process.
Car safety has already improved dramatically. Continued advances in technology are set to make our roads even safer. So in another 20 years, car crashes could almost be a thing of the past. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and the international news at 6:30. Let's now get a preview to London. Ranveer Singh.
An eye-watering price hike in gas and electricity for npower customers. Over 1 million households will pay £100 more, and there's a warning, other suppliers are likely to follow. An armed man with a knife shouting in Arabic is shot by a French soldier guarding the Louvre in Paris. And bridging the gap, the community split in half by floods comes together at last. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thank you, Ranveer. Now here's a man who always packs a punch. It's Andrew with your sport. Thanks, Fred.
Sports tonight, it's a knockout.
Hey.
Yes, well, Chris Eubank Jr. is looking to become a world champion this weekend, more than 16 years after his father beat Nigel Benn to win the WBO middleweight title. The 27-year-old from Brighton takes on the IBO World Super Middleweight Champion, Australian Reynold Quinlan. The bout's being shown live on ITV's new pay-per-view channel, and Eubank Jr. says for him it'll be the start of great things. Whew. A warning, this footage contains flash photography.
This is the chance to earn my ticket, to earn my right to then go forth and challenge all the other world champions in the divisions that I want to fight in. You know, before I was saying names of fighters that I wanted to fight, and people said I hadn't earned the right. You know, I was skipping the line. Now I have an opportunity to earn a world title. This is it's a huge opportunity for me and a very important fight.
Eubank Senior there, keen as ever to be involved. Now on to football, and Brighton missed out on the chance to extend their lead at the top of the Championship last night. They lost at Huddersfield, meaning Chris Hughton's men stayed just 1 point above Newcastle, with Reading not too far behind. The Seagulls, in red here, were a goal down in the 9th minute, Tommy Smith firing home. But Brighton had only lost once in their last 22 league matches and equalised through Tomer Hemed. Chris Hughton said his team were nowhere near the level they needed to be, falling behind to Nahki Wells, and said they'll have to improve to get anything against Brentford on Sunday, Elias Kachunga adding a third. A miserable night in Yorkshire compounded when Lewis Dunk was sent off for a second offence. This weekend, it's Derby Day as Swindon Town host Oxford United. Oxford full of confidence, having knocked Newcastle out of the FA Cup and beaten high-flying Rochdale. But boss Michael Apperton admits struggling Swindon have nothing to lose.
They've got everything to play for in this game, and the fact that it's 3 points, and I suppose it is only 3 points, but the reality is that it's a bit bigger than that, and we all know that. The motivation that comes from beating your local rivals is pretty big, and we expect them to be coming out of the traps pretty early and as quick as they possibly can to try and put that right.
So, tomorrow, Bournemouth travel to Everton, Southampton welcome West Ham and former captain Jose Font. In the Championship, Reading are at Ipswich, and in League Two, Crawley take on Stevenage, while Portsmouth go to promotion rivals Wycombe. On Sunday, it's Swindon v Oxford United at midday, and Brighton play Brentford at 3. In horse racing, Dorset trainer Colin Tizard has confirmed Native River will not be running in the Grand National, but he will be at the Gold Cup, where he's second favourite to stablemate Thistlecrack. All of the big races will be on ITV, with the sport back on the channel for the first time in more than 30 years. Kevin Ashford has been behind the scenes to bring us more.
Last break of the game. Will he score? Oh yes! Oh, what a finish!
Selco, sponsoring ITV Meridian Sports Report.
And they're under starters' orders.
It's one of ITV's newest programmes, but getting the horse racing analysis and action onto our screens when race day means 2 live programmes, well, that's not a straightforward task.
Logistically, it's a huge operation. It involves a fleet of these, trucks and an awful lot of that. As you can see, cables. And setting up begins well over 24 hours before any racing at all begins.
Tim on EBS. Tim, hello mate. Just checking you can hear me.
That's how long it takes to put together the network of communications and coverage from 24 cameras around the course, all coordinated inside these trucks. On the day that involves some 90 to 100 people, and that's on top of days of planning.
Our week starts in earnest on a Tuesday with a debrief meeting from the previous Saturday, and then we start hatching our plans for this week, converting those ideas into features, etc., scripts that get written on a Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday is our main day where we try and finalise everything, and then we travel to the racecourse on a Friday for finishing touches, rehearsals, and then Saturday is show day. And then it starts all over again on Tuesday, so it's been a 52-week-a-year operation.
30 seconds, you're on air.
The pressure is on to get it right. Horse racing holds a special place in the hearts of the British public. It's the second highest attended sport behind football.
Just the atmosphere, I suppose. Just coming here in particular, just incredible. Can't beat it.
It's the excitement, it's looking at the beautiful horses, and it's the fact that it's a good day out.
It's great. Loads of people, big place, awesome.
A crucial part of horse racing is the state of the ground that the horses are running on. It's known as the going. Weather plays a vital part in affecting that, so the weather presenters play a pretty vital part too.
I know nothing about racing. I'm not going to lie. Working with ITV Sport's amazing. It's great learning about a whole new subject, a whole new sport. Until now, the only sport I've been linked to is cricket, which of course is very weather related as well. Horse racing I know nothing about, but because they're so obsessed with the ground and how it reacts to different weather conditions, it turns out they're obsessed with weather as well, so everyone's happy.
With 41 days horse racing coverage on ITV's main channel and 53 days on ITV4 this year, well, there's a good chance the travelling team behind it will be coming to a racecourse near you. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
So plenty of explosive sport on offer this weekend.
And the big question, I suppose, Patey, can young Eubank do it?
He certainly can. He is overwhelming favourite to do it, despite Reynolds being the world champion at the moment. Eubank all of the way. He's already planning for the next one.
He's your tip, is he?
He's the big tip for the day.
Yeah, we'll talk again on Monday, shall we?
Oh dear.
Thank you, Andrew, very much. Now, around 150 mosques across the country will open their doors to members of the community on Sunday. The event aims to dispel negative perceptions of Islam and educate more people about the religion.
Yes, organised by the Muslim Council of Britain, 6 mosques in the ITV Meridian region are welcoming visitors. Among them, the Medina Mosque in Southampton, Portsmouth Central Mosque, Camberley Mosque, the Asher Masjid and Islamic Centre in Reading, Maidenhead Mosque and the Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking.
Well, the Visit My Mosque initiative hopes to shine a light on just how British Muslims are helping their local communities, from providing meals for the homeless to visiting the elderly and the sick, as our reporter Tom Savides has been finding out.
Here we have the main hall of the mosque. As you can see, the rows are sort of lined out within the design of the carpet.
Opening up about Islam. Mosques like this one are inviting the general public inside on Sunday to try to explain more about the faith and those who follow it.
This initiative, led by the Muslim Council of Britain National Initiative, is inviting everyone to open doors, show them that the mosques are an open place where they can come and see exactly what goes on. And contrary to the sort of view they may have from the media, which may give an impression that there's a sinister activity going on in these places, when in fact they're primarily a place of worship.
The move comes at a time when the Muslim community in this country is having to come to terms with recent developments such as the temporary travel ban to America imposed by President Donald Trump on people from 7 mainly Muslim countries.
It's a challenging time, I would say. I think people will remain Muslim as they are, but they have a lot of challenges, I think, from what's being covered in the media, generally around terrorism and extremism, and also with the growth of the far right. And lots of attacks on Muslims, Islamophobia and so on. But our view is that the best way to challenge a lot of this is to be more open and accommodating and let people know so that they don't have any misconceptions about Muslims and Islam. And Visit My Mosque is a fantastic way to say to people, you know, you're all welcome to come and see and be welcome for tea and biscuits.
This is the 3rd year of Visit My Mosque Day. If previous years are anything to go by, thousands across the country will take up the chance to see inside these centres of worship at the heart of their communities. Tom Savides, ITV News.
And that's this Sunday. Well, visiting us now is Simon. Simon, what's going on with the weather again?
Well, storm not Doris, because not stormy enough to be named Doris.
No.
But still everyone on social media calling her Doris.
But we don't.
She isn't. No, we know the truth. Is, as we speak, kind of doing her worst. Yes. So we've been asking for pictures all day of how the weather has looked where you are. Some pretty good ones have come in. Look, this is Paul DeMarco. Took this. Midday, that's Banjo Jetty in Swanage, getting a bit of a kick, he said. And Mike Streeter was also there a few hours later and sent that one that went very quickly. Catherine, was, whose Twitter handle, by the way, is Teach on the Beach, sent in this from Hengistbury Head. Those are the appropriately dressed for the wet weather children who were braving the elements. And this is the choppy sea that they were experiencing earlier on today. Much calmer image here from Carl Terry, who took this at about 5 to 4 this afternoon in Otterbourne. He said, lovely rain and cloudy skies, very cold too. Interesting use of the word lovely before rain. Most people don't go for that. And one picture from yesterday for you. Jackie sent this in from Mudderford of the massive amount of foam that the rough sea stirred up. Do you want to know what sea foam is?
No. Go on.
If you were to get a glass of water, sea water, and shake it up, there are all sorts of bits and bobs in there. Bits of algae, bits of all sorts of horrible things, and that's what stirs up and turns into the sea foam. So don't ever drink seawater.
Your forecast last night was spot on. A bad hair day, you said. Looking at you, by God, you.
Oh, there was no need, was there? There was no need.
Come on, you two.
The weekend forecast now. Simon Parkin.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, in my inbox today, there were more than a few pictures called the calm before the storm. This was one of them. Nick Lucas took the picture at Avon Beach in Muddyford first thing this morning. Lovely start to the day, because it did go downhill somewhat, and it's a little stormy just now. In fact, we're at probably the worst stage of the storm as the low pressure creeps its way eastwards over the next couple of hours. Winds gusting 60, 70 miles an hour along the coast, 40 to 50 inland, so that Met Office weather warning stays with us until quarter to midnight. But then things will improve. You can see that rain clears away, and then by around 10, 11 o'clock things are much quieter. Odd showers creeping in off the sea, but generally it's a dry story. A lot of clear skies though, and it will feel quite cold. Suddenly with that temperature drop down to around freezing in some rural spots, there is a risk of perhaps a bit of ice on untreated surfaces, but the wind's calming down through the night too. If you're up first thing tomorrow morning, you might just find a little bit of rain first thing, but that'll clear away eastwards fairly quickly, and then any cloud will break up. Some decent sunshine through Saturday. Temperature-wise, well, not brilliant, 7, 8 degrees at best, but certainly it's going to be a lot less windy than it's been today, so if you are outside, actually shouldn't feel too bad. But then later on into the evening, the cloud will start to thicken up again, and the next lot of rain comes in as the next weather system pushes our way, but that's going to clear through Saturday night, so Sunday isn't looking too bad. As for your high tide times, well, you can see in Portsmouth around 25 to 5 in the morning, then 5 o'clock in the evening, and then Sunday, like I say, a pretty decent day. Cold start, but generally dry. Fair bit of cloud though.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And in just a moment, we've got the ITV Evening News with Ranveer Singh.
Stacey Poole's got our late news. Join her if you can, but for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for watching. Have a pleasant weekend. Take care. See you next week.
Happy weekend. Bye-bye.